You're watching TelecomTV's Spotlight on 5G Week. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content, and we're going to stray ever so slightly away from the world of telecoms now, because if there's one thing we at TelecomTV love even more than the soothing sound of a room full of servers, it's the expectant pop of a cork as it is gently prized from its captive bottle. A sound that promises so much, yet sadly for many of us can often under-deliver. Well, we're about to fix that. For all you fellow wine lovers, and especially those of you who enjoy the occasional glass or two, we're going to help you get the most from your MWC week, even if, like us, you won't be there in Barcelona this year. We're going to guide you through the evening networking joys of Spanish wines, with the considerable help of Pierre Mansour, who is Director of Wine for the Wine Society and is also responsible for its selection of Spanish wines. Pierre, delighted you can join us this week. I've been a very happy member of the Wine Society now for years, and the advice and service it delivers to its members, whether they're looking to spend, under £10 a bottle or many multiples of that, is just second to none. Before we delve into our Spanish selections, can you give us some background to the Society and its history?
Absolutely, Guy. So the Wine Society is in many ways the original wine club, founded in 1874 in London. And what makes the Wine Society quite different is that it's an organisation that is owned by its members. Its members are wine lovers. We don't have any shareholders. Our purpose is quite simply to provide joyful wines and the services around those wines for our members. So we're not distracted as an organisation by driving profit or driving growth. We're simply in the business of offering fantastic wines, and we have a range of around 1,500 wines, which is one of the broadest ranges in the UK, covering all parts of the world. And we supply wines to private members all around the country. And it's really easy to be a member. You're not tied into any subscription. You just pay £40 for life and you get access to our terrific value wines.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree there, Pierre. Now, what is it about Spain that makes it one of the very top producers of wine?
Spain is, without doubt, one of the most exciting wine countries in the world. It's a big landmass. It has more land under vine than any other country in the world, more than Italy, more than France, for example. The other thing that makes Spain stand out is it has incredible variety of local indigenous grape varieties and some fantastically old vineyards. Some, in many cases, are ancient vineyards that have grown vines for centuries. The other advantage that Spain has is its climate. Generally a very beneficial, mild, sunny climate. So year after year, the grapes ripen really, really healthily. And then the third element is its winemaking. The winemaking of Spain has a lot of tradition and history behind it. But what's quite exciting at the moment is a newer generation of younger winemakers coming through who have actually traveled more widely, learnt more modern techniques from other parts of the world, brought those back and adapted them to the traditional techniques that they use in Spain. So the result you get here is a fantastic quality of wine, but also a diversity of wine because of that big landmass. So Spain produces terrific wines right across different styles: white wines, rosé wines, red wines, sparkling wines, and fortified wines, and sweet wines. So there's kind of something for everyone in Spain.
It's good to hear that the traditions are continuing, and so is the innovation. Now, the majority of our audience has attended the Mobile Industry's annual Congress in Barcelona year after year in many cases, and we've all wrestled with wine lists, often with mixed results. Now, as we're running our programme across 4 days, it makes sense to identify 4 distinct types of Spanish wine from specific regions and then make a recommendation of a representative bottle, and I'm very excited to see what you've selected for us, and we'll publish details on the website so our viewers can try them for themselves. So Pierre, what's your first selection?
So Guy, first thing to say is this was tough to pick just 4 regions from Spain. There are over 60 qualified quality areas in Spain, denominations. So there's a lot of choice, and that made my job really hard this evening. And not forgetting that Spain makes all styles of wine very successfully: white wine, rosé wine, red wine, sparkling wine, fortified wine in terms of sherry. And in many ways you could dedicate whole hours of sessions just on those styles. So my rationale for what I picked this evening or this afternoon, don't know if the messed up there on the timing, hopefully you can edit that one out. My rationale was quite simple. I decided to pick 4 wines that were made from indigenous grape varieties. I decided to pick a wine that came from where the conference was due to take place in Barcelona and from the wider area of Catalonia. I've picked a white wine from the northwest of Spain because I think this is an area that is really innovating and making some really exciting wines. I picked a really super easy drinking, inexpensive red wine from an area called Navarra. And then the final wine I've picked couldn't do Spain without giving a nod to Rioja, which is Spain's preeminent wine region. The first bottle that I've picked is a Carver, and this is the Society's Carver, which is a wine that is under our own label. And Carver was an invention of the Catalans. Barcelona is in Catalonia, and actually as a Spanish culture, the Catalans are very inventive, very, very creative, incredibly well organized. And Carver as a sparkling wine requires real attention to detail. It's a very long process to make Carver. I've picked Carver, and some of you might think, well, that's a bit of an obvious choice. I'll tell you why I've picked Carver. I've picked it because I think poor old Carver has a bit of an image problem. There are other sparkling wines made around the world that are doing a much better job at their PR, at their image, and Carver less so. Yet Carver offers drinkers a fantastic quality of sparkling wine for its price point. This is merely £8.95. To be Carver, it has to be made in a very specific way. And that way means that the sparkle of the bottle happens naturally within the bottle that it's sold. And that sparkle is a really long process. It's a second fermentation in the bottle that takes about 3 years. There's only one other sparkling wine style that has such stringent criteria, and that's champagne. Carver is made in exactly the same way as champagne, but it's from grapes grown in Penedès around Barcelona. It's from grapes that are called Xarel·lo, Macabeo, which are local grape varieties. And you get a very good alternative here to champagne. So this is a dry style of sparkling wine. That long aging that I talked about adds a lovely toasty note to the flavor. And this is a really elegant, sophisticated drink for the price. And as long as it remains a wine that does have a little bit of an image problem, in many ways that's good news for wine drinkers who know how to seek out value, because the wines are frankly underpriced for what they represent.
Now, I love Carver, and when you go to Barcelona, you go into the supermarkets there, there's shelf after shelf after shelf full of bottles of Carver. And what I discovered, it's surprisingly good with food over there. It's
incredibly good with food over there. One of One of my favorite food and wine matches, quite a simple one, is to have Carver with lovely Spanish Iberico ham. The saltiness of the ham offsets the acidity in the wine and combines really, really well. It's one of my favorites. It's actually what we do at Christmas time here at home in the UK. We always kick off our Christmas lunch with a bottle of Carver and some Spanish ham, just simply done.
I think that's about to become our new tradition as well. Pierre, let's move on. Let's move on to our second selection then. What's your second selection for us?
So my second selection is a wine called Pazo de Villaray. That's the name of the producer. The key thing here is Alberino. That's the name of the grape variety. The region that Alberino is grown in is Galicia in northwestern Spain. And this is a really Atlantic influenced part of Spain. Its nickname is Green Spain because it's quite cool, it's quite damp, it rains quite a lot. And so it makes wines, only specific grape varieties will grow and ripen successfully in this part of Spain. And one of those is Alberino. Being slightly cooler, the wines tend to be lighter, fresher, they're not big and heavy, and they tend to work best with absolutely no oak. So they're made really, really simply. The reason that I picked this wine is because Alberino has really spearheaded a huge revolution in Spanish white winemaking. And it's really down to the advent of stainless steel in wine. And in Spain, a lot of Spain's traditional winemaking is based on using oak. Stainless steel is an inert container, and with specific styles of wine can help express that brightness of fruit. And Alberino is one of those. So 20, 30 years ago, there really wasn't good quality Alberino on the market. In the last 15 years, the progress in this area has been astonishing, so much so that countries around the world, countries in the Southern Hemisphere, in the US and so on, are starting to grow Alberino because this has become quite a fashionable grape, and it makes a really lovely white wine to drink on a summer's day. It's a lovely aperitif style white wine that has a sort of appley, peachy fruit character and mouth-watering and very refreshing.
Is there a similarity with a similar wine from Portugal? Isn't there an Alberino or a similar named wine from Portugal?
That's a good question. There is a similarity with some of the wines from Portugal. So Galicia does border Portugal. So some of the winemaking influences are quite similar. And in fact, Portugal also grows Alberino, and they call it Alvarino with a V. And the wines are very similar in style. It's really difficult to distinguish the differences between the white Alberino wines from Portugal and the ones in Spain. They tend to have the same kind of body and structure. So if you've come across Alberino in Portugal and like those wines, you should definitely try Alberino in Spain and vice versa.
So that's two solid choices. What's your third choice for us?
So we're now moving to red wine with this fantastic label here from a small company called Vinya Zorzal Garnacha. And this is a young team who are based in the region of Navarra, which is in the sort of north central Spain. And Navarra actually is where a lot of Spanish fresh produce is grown. Lots of vegetables and fruit are grown here in Navarra. It's a particularly fertile area. It's also quite a vast area. And Navarra grows a number of different grape varieties. The one that I think is most interesting from Navarra is the Garnacha grape. The Garnacha grape, it's the same grape as the French Grenache grape, which is grown in southern France and in the southern Rhone. It's the grape behind Châteauneuf-du-Pape. Garnacha is particularly good in Navarra because they have some of the oldest vineyards of Garnacha. So this wine, Viña Zorzal, comes from vineyards of over 40 years old. Now, you might say, so what? What does an old vineyard bring to the wine? Well, actually, what it brings to the wine, particularly with the Garnacha grape, is it produces smaller grapes and smaller quantities of grapes per vine. And as a result of that, you get higher concentration of flavor. The flavor in wine is derived from the skins of the grapes. So the smaller the grapes, the more skin to pulp ratio you'd get, and therefore more flavor. So you've got these terrifically healthy grapes of Garnacha. And this particular wine, we sell it for just £7.25. So it's an everyday sort of drinking style of red wine. It's made really simply. They pick the grapes, they press the grapes, they allow the fermentation to take place. There's no aging in oak or barrel. They bottle the wines when they're quite young. And this is a wine that is all about the fruit. It's got a lovely deep purple color. And when you smell the wine, it just has lovely red berry fruit. Very, very expressive. It's uncomplicated. And it's just a sheer joy to drink. Garnacha has this lovely, succulent, juicy quality without being powerful. So this is a lovely wine to have. It's really versatile. It'll go with all sorts of food, perfect with barbecues, perfect for parties, uncomplicated. It sits in the back. People will love it.
So very much an everyday, whatever the purpose, whatever the occasion wine.
Exactly. It's that kind of wine. It's the, if I think quite often with wine, it's quite easy to get caught into this sort of real kind of difficult place of, oh, we've got people coming over. What wine should I have? I don't know whether to have this wine or that wine. Actually, in most instances, particularly if you're having a relatively big group event, generally you just want to pick a wine that is quite safe, reflects where it comes from, but will bring pleasure to lots of people. And this is that kind of wine.
So perfect for those networking evenings at MWC. What's your fourth and final choice?
So final choice, we're going up the ladder now. We're now very much into fine wine country for Spain. This is the Society's exhibition Rioja Reserve. The Society's exhibition label is our flagship own label, and this is the Reserva Rioja that we do. Now, Rioja is an area that probably doesn't need much introduction. It's incredibly well known, even amongst, I think, non-wine drinkers. It has, done a terrific job in promoting itself, and that's because it makes really good, consistently good quality wines. The grape variety here that is the lead, the star of the show is the Tempranillo grape, and usually in Rioja, Tempranillo forms most of the blend of the wine, but they also use some other grapes to support Tempranillo. So a classic Rioja blend would be sort of Tempranillo and then 30% of other grapes, including Garnacha and some other local grapes too. The key thing that makes Rioja stand out and have its own sort of personality is all around the aging. So Rioja is the area that really, I guess, invented long-term or long, gentle barrel and then bottle aging before releasing the wines. And in fact, so much so that the aging requirements are enshrined in wine law in Rioja. So it was Rioja that invented the term Reserva, Gran Reserva, and Crianza. In fact, starting at Crianza, going up to Gran Reserva. And each of those terms, in order to call your wine a Crianza or Gran Reserva, you have to have aged your Rioja for a certain period of time in barrel and bottle before release. In general, the higher you go up, the better quality, but that's not always the case, because in fact, a producer could put any type of grapes and age them for 5 years and call their wine Gran Reserva. So the key thing with Rioja is follow a producer, because the best producers put their best grapes in Reserva and Gran Reserva. This particular Reserva, this is the 2015 vintage. We've just released it. That's 6 years of age before it's released. So the bodega in Rioja has done that job of patiently waiting and letting the wine evolve and releasing it when it's ready to drink. What does that do to the wine? Well, what it does, first of all, is it changes the color. So aged Rioja Reserva isn't really a purple color. They tend to be more sort of mahogany, garnet in color. The second thing this extended aging does is it changes the flavors of the wine. Instead of the wines being fruity, the wines tend to be more savory, often described as spicy or earthy or leathery. So you get this really lovely complexity. And the third element of aging is it softens the texture of the wine. So you get this lovely, smooth, soft texture. They're absolutely delicious wines that really add to the fine dining experience and have a sort of autumnal feel about them. They're very warming, cozy wines to drink.
Now, when we're faced with a wine list and we're looking down the reds and you see the name Rioja and you think, I know Rioja, because as you say, they've done such a great job of marketing and promoting their wines. So you think that's a safe bet. I'll choose the Rioja. But I'm guessing also because of this, there's a huge range and variety. You could be disappointed if you're not careful.
You could be disappointed with Rioja. You've got to, my mantra is when you come across a producer or a bodega, so normally on the labels, it's very clear who the bodega is. When you come across one that you really like, I would urge you to continue to follow that producer. One of the sort of tactics that some retailers might use is if we list a Rioja and it's a Gran Reserva, I can guarantee that sales will go through the roof because it's Gran Reserva. And actually, the important thing is that you trust your wine merchant that when they list a Gran Reserva, it genuinely has Gran Reserva quality wine in it. So let me explain that. What I mean by that is only top quality wine will support that extensive aging. Otherwise, the wines just end up becoming quite tired and old. So if you follow a producer who you trust, who you know is only putting the top, best quality fruit into their top wines, you will be more often than not satisfied, because overall, the quality coming out of Rioja is fantastic.
Great advice, Pierre. Thank you for that. 4 very different wines, each with their own distinctive characteristics. Thanks for guiding us through this selection. Now, as you said earlier, the market is obviously far more extensive than this. We haven't even touched on the sherries, for example. Huge variations. Any other top tips for Spanish wines? If we're feeling a little bit more adventurous and we want to try something more innovative, what should we be looking for?
So I think there's a number of things. I think the grape Mencia is really exciting. This is a red grape grown in Galicia, where Alberino is grown, and that's making some really exciting, quite refined pure styles of red wine. So I'd look out for Mencia. Down in the south of Spain, Monastrell, great variety, is making some really lovely, big, powerful, sort of blockbuster styles of red wine. Down around Valencia, Alicante, Jumia is an area which has some of the most amazing, quite arid vineyards of Monastrell. Then two other areas from a fine wine perspective that are really worth checking out are Ribera del Duero, which is, I guess, one of the newer fine wine parts of Spain, which is really shaking up the scene. Also grows Tempranillo, makes fantastically intense expressions of Tempranillo. And the second region, again, not far from Barcelona, actually, in Catalonia, is Priorat, which makes these superb, quite sort of rustic, complex Mediterranean blends of Garnacha, Syrah, and Carignan. But I could go on
Fantastic.
and on and on. Actually, there's so many. I mean, there are thousands of grapes, but I think those would be the ones I would seek out.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Pierre. It's been terrific talking with you.
Thanks, Guy, and I'm hoping that I've given you some tips to unlock some great drinking in Spain over the years. Thank you.
Yeah, you certainly have. And if our viewers want to try your selections for themselves, then there's two ways to do so. If you're in the UK, then please consider joining the society and buying these wines direct. I'm a member, several of my colleagues here at TelecomTV are too. We're not talking about commission or introduction fees here. This is a genuine personal recommendation for me. Go take a look at the website, thewinesociety.com, and decide for yourself. If you're not a UK resident, then you probably don't need me to tell you how difficult it is trying to import wines directly, especially post-Brexit. But give the society a call, see what they can do. Otherwise, we recommend you take the list that we're going to give you to your favourite local merchant and try and obtain bottles that way, or get the best match you can. And there's many excellent wine merchants out there who I'm sure would be delighted to assist you. And next time you're in Barcelona for MWC, remember our selections, and I hope they help you make more sense of the local wine lists and add to your enjoyment of Spain. For now though, thanks for watching and goodbye.